Hi, I'm Jackie Tantillo, and this is Should Have Listened to My Mother. Thanks again for being a fan of Should Have Listened to My Mother. I'm the lucky one to introduce you to my guests each week from all corners of the world who either found me wanting to share their story or vice versa. And you can listen to Should Have Listened to My Mother wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, and please remember to like and subscribe. In my mind, my guest is an angel, only because I know from firsthand experience what's truly required of a full-time caregiver. And though my guest has won awards for design work, writing, and directing, he also won an award for Best at Charming Themselves Out of Trouble while in 7th grade. He's one of 6 children and grew up in New Jersey and is now residing in the south of France. Single and living in LA and suddenly transitioning to primary caregiver is not for the faint of heart. Lots of wonderful stories and lessons learned is what encompasses Mark Porro's most recent book, A Cup of Tea on the Commode. Genevieve, Mark's mom, has a long list of gifts she gave to her family, and I am so happy to have Mark Porro here to share them with us on Should Have Listened to My Mother. Bonjour, Mark, and welcome.
Bonjour. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to connect back with the United States.
Yeah. You are living in France, so that's your next book, perhaps. But your mom, she was remarkable. And again, I'm not going to underestimate the job of a caregiver. So looking back, I think you forget all the real complicated situation that one gets into in being the caregiver, right? It's extremely complicated. But, looking back, it seems so much easier than it actually was when you're in the middle of it. I would love to begin with sharing some stories of your mom, because I know she grew up in Garden City, New York, and she was a bit of a spitfire right out of the gate, wasn't she?
Yeah, well, she was an only child, and so I would say she was, as I call her, she was very independent, very stubborn. She had some royal qualities. I have a chapter in the book called Queen for a Day, and then I go into all these things. So she kept her emotions pretty much close to the vest, and I don't think she ever complained about pain or anything. She had 6 kids, and being an only child, and all of a sudden, within first 7 years of marriage, she had 5 kids, and then 4 years later, my little sister came along. And so I think that had to be a shock for her. My dad was one of 6 in his family, and he had a lot of cousins around. So I made a comment in the book that my father didn't find any peace and quiet until he joined the army.
Right. I remember reading that. That was very funny.
Yeah, with Mom, though, she did great, though. And then she worked full-time. She didn't work full-time right away. She had an addiction that we all dealt with, and we had some fun, but it was a shopaholic. And that was her only addiction. And so shopping became a very interesting thing. And then she had to take, I think, to help support that, because my dad was a chemist, and he always was concerned about paying all the bills, especially with this shopaholic wife. And so she took all these different part-time jobs and included us with a lot of them. So we worked as kids all the time. We grew up working. The boys did their own things. So we had paper routes, and we shoveled and raked leaves and mowed lawns and things like that. And my sisters taught ballet and babysat. And but my mom also took us on jobs where we delivered new samples of new products, like Gaines soap was a new thing back in the 60s, and delivering phone books, and then selling Christmas cards and Christmas wreaths.
Wow, she had you busy.
Yeah, and we learned about saving money and investing way back then, which was good lessons. And then I think after having her sixth child, she decided to go back. She was a proofreader before she got married. And so she took a job with the Bergen Record, which at the time was the largest newspaper in New Jersey.
She also was a hand model, right? She was a
hand model early on. She had gorgeous, she was gorgeous anyway. I say in the book she had movie star looks, but her hands were legendary. She had long, natural fingernails, no acrylics or any of that other stuff for her. And they were always gorgeous. Later on in life, when I took over the caregiving, I had to trim those things down because at that point they were lethal weapons. And so she had these, it was like Edward Scissorhands. It took me several sessions to do it because those were her prized possessions. So it was tough. And being a stubborn, guilt-tripping lady, I had to deal with all that. But we got them trimmed, and she survived that part of it anyway.
So she had a bit of a tough upbringing. Her dad died relatively suddenly.
Yeah, I think the first thing, her only sibling died shortly after birth. So that was her first experience with death. And then her favorite uncle, Uncle William, that we heard about, committed suicide when she was 11. And then when she was, I think, 23 at the time, her father died, and he was only, I think, maybe 54. He was a heavy smoker, and he died from that. And
they were very close, right? She and her dad.
Yeah, she was very, very close with her dad. I think more so than with her mom. But her mom had, I think, when her father passed away, and I investigate this a little bit in the book, her mother seemed to be in denial. And so I say that at the day her father died, she lost her father to smoking, and she lost her mother to mental health. And then they had a pretty contentious relationship after that. And back then, the parish priest, the local parish priest, had a lot of power and influence, especially on a Catholic girl. And the doctors recommended her mother be put away. And she suffered shock treatment and things like that, and never forgave her daughter. Her daughter was in charge of her care at that point and had to make that decision. So she never forgave her daughter. And then, so the relationship was pretty rocky after that.
Right. Mental illness is such a broad topic. There's all that trickle-down effect. It's really hard. And she was relatively young when all of this was happening, let alone losing her dad, who she really loved. Not that she didn't love her mom, but it was more complicated. Just from reading the book, I understand that it was a complicated relationship.
Right.
So how old was she when they got married? It was 1947 that they met, your parents, I think?
She was 27, and my dad was 33 when they got married. So that happened relatively quick. Yeah, they met, mutual friends, Jim and Laura, Uncle Jim and Laura, introduced them, and they got married the next year. And you want to say, and they lived happily ever after. But it was they had some issues because both were very independent and stubborn, and you put those kind of personalities together, and you're going to have some friction. And so death did they part, but they had some issues. There was tension and stuff, and we grew up with that in the house. But we survived. Both parents had really good senses of humor, and they passed that on to us. So humor was a big part of whether that helped us get through all that stuff or what. But all of us kids became very independent, I think, because of that, because both worked full-time. My mother actually worked the graveyard shift. So I think that kind of helped the marriage because mom was gone at night and dad was gone during the day.
And the six kids were all over the place.
Yeah, my oldest sister, I guess, kind of became like a surrogate mom. She's 7 years older than I was, and she was great. And so, yeah, but I had a great relationship with both of my parents. I was a very curious kid and got them to open up about things they never opened up about. And I think some of the revelations that I have in the book surprised some of my siblings because whether it was my acting or just curiosity, I wanted to know more about them. And I was into the family history. And so it was interesting. With my dad.
You. That's wonderful.
My dad and I had the sex talk with me coaching him when he was 70. think so.
No,
I
Dad,
never
that's
had,
not how you do it. You do it this
that's
way.
that's not how. Well, he knew something
He
because he
knew
had six
something.
kids. Yeah.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
Yeah, so there was, and then with mom, I got her to open up about all kinds of stuff. And there was a lot of, let's say, not tragedies, but small crises and some big ones throughout our life. And I just happened to be there for most of those, whether it was intentional or, if anything happened with her or my dad, I would fly in no matter where I was, like the next morning. That became our thing. And
You're the mediator.
I guess, or just like it's kind of the right thing to do. You want to be treated this way, so you treat others that way. So, taking this caregiving job on was not a hard decision. Working out of logistics was a little more difficult because I was living in LA at the time. But the decision was easy, and my mom deserved better than what she had at that point. And I said, we're gonna give you the your last years. We didn't call it the last years, but we're gonna make you healthy, happy, and have a good time for as long as you want to be around. So
And that's the philosophy hopefully we can all offer to our loved ones, right? I mean, in growing up in Garden City, similarly as your mom, and everyone was either Irish Catholic, Italian Catholic for the most part, 8 kids, 15 kids. So there's always going to be conflict, and there's wonderful stories that you share. There's 3 girls and 3 boys, your siblings, right? The 6.
Right.
And the stories that you tell of the shenanigans of what your brothers would do to you are pretty wonderful. And if you care to share, because your mom had to live through all that, as most moms do, right?
Well, I'm not sure how much she knew of it because during the day she would be napping because she worked at night. So
that's right.
She may have missed a bunch of this stuff. My dad had to deal with some of it, but no, I had to kind of fend for myself. I am the tallest now, and revenge is coming. Because they were. My oldest brother wasn't so bad, Michael, but David, I was 2.5 years younger than David, and I was like a test dummy for him. And I thought I might have been exaggerating, but I double checked a lot of these things. And then my nephew went to, he was back in New York doing having some meetings, and he stayed with my brother who lives still in the same town I grew up in, Ridgewood. And he called me after. He said, "Oh my God, the things he put you through."
The dryer alone. I said the dryer. I don't want to give everything away in the book, but
I just saw, I want to send this to my brother because we still speak. There was a Far Side comic that I just saw yesterday. Someone posted on Facebook where it has a dryer with the door open and all these signs saying cat food, in here. And the cat is looking he's looking inside the dryer, making a decision. Should I go in or not? And there's a dog around the corner going, please, 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 please. So I wanted to send that to my brother because he talked me into getting inside the dryer and take it. Well, I didn't take it for a spin. He took it for a spin.
Right. Oh my gosh. And you lived to tell the story.
And one benefit, I've never had to iron my clothes since.
Oh my gosh, the things that we lived through, what we survived is amazing.
Yeah. I think that a lot of that had to do with me not wanting children, because if my parents knew just a fraction of what we went through, they probably would have ended it for us anyway. So it's tough.
It's tough, but it also makes brilliant literature, comedic, role-playing roles. Absolutely. There's a couple of gifts, or many gifts, that I took note of about your mom and the kind of personality. Other than her love of shopping, she also taught her sons to be gentlemen and walk on the outside of the sidewalk, which is interesting because my husband does the same thing. His mom taught him the exact same thing. Do you want to talk about that?
Bravo. Well, some of these things seem old-fashioned, but once in a while they come up. It was interesting. Someone posted again something on Facebook about why would somebody do that? And you say, oh, well, of course you do that if you were brought up that way. So the original story came up, I think, back in the old days where the stagecoaches would come by, and if they hit a dirt or a puddle, it would splash up onto the sidewalk or the wood planks, boardwalk kind of thing. And so the man would take the splash to guard the ladies from that. So,
or if something was thrown out the window, some sort of waste or something was thrown out of from above, the gentleman would be.
Yeah. And then also, this may be a little, old-fashioned, but even on elevators, Mom would say, you step on the elevator first to make sure it's safe for a lady to enter.
Oh, right,
and then you step off first to make sure a lady can exit safely, which is also very nice. But I learned those kind of lessons from my dad, too, whether old-fashioned or not. I said chivalry never dies, and it shouldn't. But, when I would watch my father do things, he would never tell us to do this. So you just watch, and I think both of my parents, they led by example. So when we went to church, my father would always let the ladies go into the pew first, and he would go in last, and then he would get out into the aisle and let them all go before him on their way to communion and back and forth. And so I always did that. And you always open doors, car doors. I still do that all the time. When my niece first met a guy that she thought was going to be the guy, I said, on your first date, if he does not open your car door, he is not the guy. And
how'd it go?
They've been married for about 15 years, so I'm not sure. I hope he opened the door because he seems to be a very good gentleman. But,
good.
I mean, little things like that are just, I think, normal. They're also nice, but they're normal. So a lot of times, actually, my girlfriend's name is Jackie also, and she's Swiss and very independent. And I sometimes have to race to the car to open the door because she's used to doing this stuff all herself. So it's kind of a shock for some people to go, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm opening the door for you."
It's great. And you're teaching other people the same lessons. You're handing it down, which I think is wonderful. There was an incident with you when you stole a bicycle and you lied to your mom.
Yeah. So I think that might have been the only time I lied to my mom. So I was I guess a pretty good kid, but I got to tell you, most of my Catholic friends growing up were the worst influence. So I did some bad things, and they were all with my Catholic friends. And then I went to public school, and I became a little better behaved, but. I was very good at picking locks. I was inspired by these TV shows and movies that made crime look so romantic. And so I just practiced picking locks. So bicycle locks were easy for me. And so one day I was picking a lock, and it was a brand new Stingray, and some other people were there, and a Catholic guy that I knew from Catholic school. This was a couple of years after I was in public school. And he said, "Why don't you steal that?" And I said, "Well, I don't need it. I don't want it." But I took the bike, and I didn't need it, but I did it, and whether it was peer pressure or whatever. And on my way home, I put the bike at a friend's place. I kind of knew, I think, where to hide it, or, just so I wouldn't be caught with the goods. And on my way home, I see a police car in front of my house. So this guy who said steal the bike must have got caught, and he turned me in. And so I waited for the police to leave, and I hid in the bushes and summoned up my courage and went into the house. And my mom was sitting at the kitchen table, and she said, "Did you steal a bike today?" And I looked at her straight in the eye, and I said, "No." And she said, "Okay." And she believed me. So I went up to my room, and I'm thinking, boy, did I get away with it. And then whether it's the Catholic guilt or just the guilt, because my parents were, good people and set a good example. And I was like, oh, I can't. So I ran down and I confessed. And it killed me because my mom said that lie hurt more than me stealing a bike. And I say in the book, because it was true, I said, I actually saw her heart break. And it was tough. It was a good lesson, and I never lied to her again, except when we were older. I mean, when I was taking care of her, I had to say things like, "This is your last bite. Go ahead." That's one more, just one more. So you have to use a little charm and stuff too. But yeah, that was a good lesson. And it was great because the way she handled it was with grace, and it was impactful. I never lied to her again.
That's the best part.
Or my dad. I don't think I ever lied to my dad.
Who was the disciplinarian?
I would have to say dad. Mom did it by guilt tripping. They say that Jewish mothers invented guilt tripping, Catholic mothers perfected it. And my mother was one of the best. My dad was a disciplinarian. He had a paddle he called the Board of Education. And I don't think he ever hit us with it, but just the threat of it was pretty good.
Because you were learning a lot from being paddled from the Board of Education.
Just the threat of the being paddled, yeah. So, he was clever, and he did a good thing. There was another incident, I'll say, that would give you an idea of my dad, though this is with my mom as well. My brother, when he went to college, he grew his hair really long. And my dad didn't like it. He said, "I don't like the hippie hair. Cut it. If I'm paying for your college and stuff, you're going to cut your hair." And my brother refused. So he said, "Well, I'm going to catch you sleeping one day. I'm going to cut your hair." So he went and did that with thinning scissors, luckily. But he cut my hair instead. And my hair was a lot shorter than my dad's. So I said his rage must have blinded him. But what he did by doing that was he killed two birds with one stone, because I never grew my hair long. Because I thought, oh, no, he's going to attack one of us. So my brother actually cut his hair, and I kept my hair at dad-approved length. And so that was the and my mom, I don't think, ever did anything like that. She would just say, this is not right. Or if she got angry, she never swore. Neither of my parents swore. And when my mother got angry, she would say things like nincompoop or fudgy wudgy, or if she was really furious, she'd say, "I'm so angry I could spit." And that's when you knew you were in trouble.
That was bad.
Yeah. So luckily I never made her spit, or I never saw her spit. With my dad, it seemed the food came to mind, because he would say, "You're full of soup. Get the ham out of here," and chowder head, things like that. So it was. They're funny now, but actually they're really good lessons, because people would laugh when they heard these things out of my parents' mouth. And I said, "That's it. That's as bad as it gets with these guys."
Well, that's a great lesson right there, right?
Yeah,
so these are all little tidbits, again, from your book, A Cup of Tea on the Commode, because, again, you became your mom's caregiver, her primary caregiver, toward the latter years of her life. And I want to make sure we perhaps can share some poignant lessons from that. And I don't want to give it all away, because your book is so great to read. Why did you feel the need to write the book?
Well, I think so. While I was doing it, because I am a writer, and I went, in Hollywood, I started writing jokes and writing scenes, and then screenplays and things like that. And I had a greeting card company, so I wrote those, and I wrote poetry, and so I always kept notes. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do with those. But while I was in this was a 3.5-year journey. And while I was in it, I had a few friends that were going through a similar journey, or were concerned about what was going on with their parents. And I kind of helped them through it. And they got encouragement and some tips from me. And I said, well, I think we have something here, because as baby boomers, we're all going to be faced with this if we haven't already. And it's only going to get, I think they say, by 2050, there's going to be 426 million people in the world over 80. And so this is something we have to face. This is going to be a health crisis. And if we can take care of our parents and give them the love and respect they deserve, and maybe some parents don't deserve that, but for the majority, I think they do. They took care of us for many years, so I think we should do the right thing. So since these friends of mine and other people I talked to over that time period, got something out of it. I said, I think we have something here. So hopefully we can inspire other people to do it, and especially men, because it still falls on the daughters, probably I think 2/3 of the time.
More
And
often than not.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but more and more men are starting to step up, which is great.
That's great.
So we're hoping to encourage others to do it, because I thought it was, it was tough. I wasn't a parent, and I was, the carefree bachelor living in Hollywood, and it was a great lesson for me. I had to learn a lot of things, being a first-time parent, especially when you have a guilt-tripping, stubborn as all get-out lady that happens to be your mom. It was difficult because I did everything. And in 2011, my brother called me. My mother just kind of shut down. She was kind of depressed, and she just kind of wanted to check out. There was no physical medical issue. She just wanted to die, it seemed. So I kind of went back, and it felt like we kind of rescued her.
Right, and it's the role reversal too, right? She's becomes the child, and you're the adult, right?
But it's interesting. So I've been the book came out on Mother's Day this year, but I've been recording the audio book, and every time I go through the book, I discover new things, because some of it will go into the next book, which is going to focus more on my dad. But it seems like in this book that I went back to rescue my mom, because she deserved better. She wasn't happy in her current situation. And I wanted to provide that for her, because I told her at one point, she asked me, why am I doing this? I said, because it's an honor for a son to take care of his mother. And she was shocked by that. And I said, this is the way we were brought up, so this should not be a surprise to you.
Well, but that's the key right there. Not everyone has that same experience growing up. You did what was right, because this is what you knew. This is what your parents taught you and how they raised you.
Right.
New York Times just did a story about this whole thing about caregiving, and they say up to 53 million Americans are caregivers for their family members.
Oh, that's great.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's a very, very important issue. It was just such a pleasure to read the book, and obviously it's sad, especially if you've lost someone that you really care about and love. It's a lot of work, but it was so nice to read it and have the heartbreaking stories and the stories of all the love and the laughter in your life.
There's a lot of laughter in it, which is good, because my mom, she was a funny lady. And one of my goals was, I said, my goal was to make her laugh at least once a day. And so I think we pretty much did that. And she made me laugh a lot also. So
this last thing I want to bring up, you asked her, I think it was in the very beginning, do you trust me? Mm-hmm. You said that to your mom, do you trust me? And she said...
Yeah, I said, once, I asked her, I said, do you want me to come back, move back, and make sure you're treated this way? And she said, yes. And I said, that means I'm in charge.
Yeah, right.
And her mood shifted, And then she puckered up for a kiss. And I wasn't sure if that was a sign of surrender or one wishing me luck.
Oh,
so I gave her a kiss and kept my fingers crossed. So.
And the rest is history, ladies and gentlemen. A Cup of Tea on the Commode by Mark Stephen Porro, and last name is spelled P as Peter, O-R-R-O. Thank you for joining me on Should Have Listened to My Mother.
It's my pleasure. We all should listen to our mothers.
Yes, shouldn't we? And we'll be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.